What happened to this conference is now being recorded?
Cool.
No, it didn't say it. It always says it. Stop the recording thing. I have to go with the red buttons on. I didn't hear this conference is now being recorded, but I'm going to go with it's being recorded, which is a fitting time to say, put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Chuck Vivian. Okay, Chuck,
I can take it from there, Joe.
Hey, Chuck.
Huh?
Can you guys hear me okay? Cool.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Hey, listen, Joe, first of all, thanks for giving me the floor this week. I was excited when you asked me, and I don't know how much I have to teach as much as I am here to have a conversation and to get your perspectives and to learn your experiences as well. A little bit about my background. I can squeeze 44 years into about 2 minutes. I started in this medical device industry with a company called American Hospital Supply back in January of 1976, January the 6th, 1976 in Detroit. And I sold for that great company for about 5 years. And as you know, if you follow that, you know, the distributor end of the business, what's left of that company is now part of Cardinal Health. And after that, I sold computer systems for about 4.5, 5 years. And that company went out of business. We didn't keep up with technology. And I found myself single and out of work living in St. Louis. And I got a call from a company called, hey, there he is. Got a call from a company called US Surgical. And I joined that company and worked there for 17 years. I joined as a sales representative, and I left there as vice president of sales for the United States. And after 17 years, and we were acquired by Tyco, and now that company is part of Medtronic, I got a call from a buddy of mine by the name of Joe DeVivo, and Joe asked me to come in to as executive vice president of sales for the Americas for a robotics company called Computer Motion, and did that for just a couple of years before Computer Motion was acquired, or we merged with Intuitive Surgical. We were competing against our old colleagues from US Surgical, right? So we merged with them, made a killing on the stock. It went from $3.50 to about 17 bucks overnight, and it kept going up. And I took my money and ran. And if I held on to that stock, I wouldn't know any of you. I'd be on my private island somewhere right now, since they're selling it over. Oh God, I don't even want to think about it. It gives me a headache.
I'm personally pretty pleased that you lost out on the opportunity.
Yeah. I'm telling you.
Like you say, we wouldn't know one another. And there's a value in that you can't put a price on.
That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling the love.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the reprocessing business for a very short period of time. That's a 2-beer story, and I'll tell you more about it if we ever get together in person in April. But I've been running a consulting firm focused on distribution, sales, marketing, and in strategy for the last 16, 17 years, and it's been great. I've learned a lot. I've always, and I asked Joe if I could talk about this, and he kind of teased me that it's my night job, and he said, hey, you think you know a guy. But patient safety has always been a passion of mine. From the time my first day on the job at American Hospital Supply, there was no training, and they told me to go down to Southwest Detroit Hospital because they had a serious problem with something called a grounding pad. So my first reaction was, what's a grounding pad? Where is Southwest Detroit Hospital? And what could possibly be the problem? And I learned at that moment going forward that there are errors that are made in surgery. And this particular grounding pad was not attached properly, and it burned the patient severely. And it was because it was applied wrong. We spent the next week doing in-services round the clock to make sure that everybody was covered. And sure enough, somebody's always not there. And, it just has always been in my mind, how can what is our responsibility from our side of the desk in terms of patient safety? What's being ignored? What's being embraced? What are we, just trying our best not to pay attention to? And I've been a member of the National Patient Safety Association for a number of years. And what motivated me, what charged me to get involved was a story that I heard someone tell from the stage. The room's packed, and this woman starts off on her presentation, and she goes into detail about a baby back in 2011. You may remember the story. It was given an overdose of a drug and died. It was all over the news, and as she was telling this story, everyone's heart dropped. And I was wondering, what's her relation to this baby? And when she described what had happened, she described this crush of the news story. She shared that the nurse who actually made that error was her daughter. And she continued to talk about it and talk about the infant and brought everybody into the story. And she said, now, what you don't know and what you haven't heard is that my daughter committed suicide 10 months after the incident. And I talked to her after she spoke, and she was so brave to stand there on the stage and share that story. And she told us about her daughter, and she had been practicing nursing for decades, and she was just super nurse, had never had a problem. And the moment she realized that she had overdosed the baby, she went running out on the floor to get help. It was truly an error. And it's things like that that have pulled me into it. So that's number one. It's like that pulled me into it like you wouldn't believe. I spoke to the woman who's the chairperson of the association. She's a physician, PhD. I said, she's running the whole meeting. She's not going to have time for me. Wrong. When I started talking to her and told her who I was and why I was there and my own stories, she sat down with me and we just had a conversation about patient safety. And then she challenged me, and how do I fit into this? What can I do? I'm not a nurse. I don't touch patients. And she said, well, you've got an industry background, so I invite you to remain engaged and keep me posted. So I didn't have any answers at the time, and I'm not sure I've got one today. But that's what pulled me into the business. Now, the other thing that really messes with my head is a couple things. There's number one, when doctors learned about devices, what I experienced, because I've been in surgery more times than I care to count. You know my role as a sales representative, right? When I was carrying a bag, you go in until the doctor understands how to use it. First time you walk them through it in great detail. It's their hands. It's a feel that they have. You have to make sure that they're comfortable with the device. First time you're telling them everything. The second time you're not saying quite as much. By the fifth time, hopefully, they know how to use it. You don't have to say a word. You can moonwalk out of there on the seventh case. So you can get to the next one and make a sale because you got to hit a quota, right? But I noticed that they teach each other how to use devices. Anybody ever play the game telephone when you were a kid? When you whisper something in somebody's ear, they say something to the next kid, and the next kid, and the next kid. I'm afraid it has the same effect when doctors teach doctors how to use medical devices. By the time it gets to the third or fourth doctor, they're using it wrong. Now, couple that with the fact that access to clinicians has gone way down. You just can't get in front of doctors and nurses the way you used to, like back in my day, you could just waltz right in and do what you had to do, and it got tighter and tighter and tighter. And now there's all sorts of barriers and badges and things you have to go through just to go in and do your job because they suspect that you're going to try and sell somebody something. Guess what? That's true. So access is way down. Now, here's the paradox that I want to ask you guys about, and I want you to think about it and give me an answer. So, this is what keeps me engaged. Doctors typically are smart people. If you look up the stats, on average, they've got a pretty darn high IQ. So here's the question. How can some of the smartest people among us use devices that are made with the utmost precision, have incidents where over the last 3 years, there's been over 2.4 million incidents turned into the FDA. Now, some of those are duplicates, but there are at least 1.5 million to 2 million incidents that have happened over the last 3 years. How can smart people use precision devices and have that many incidents happen on a regular basis? And bear in mind, get this in before you pitch in 2016, the FDA changed their guidance. And they changed it back in the day. If there was a hair in the package, people would call in a report. They were flooded. They were running, 3, 4, 5 million per year. It was crazy. And they said, listen, time out. So the guidance was, if a patient is injured or killed and the device was involved, we want to hear about it. Anything else, call the manufacturer. If it just breaks in your hand, just don't call us anymore. And still, the numbers are astronomical. How is this happening? Why is this happening? And I don't know the answer.
I'm just waiting for Michelle to turn off her mute button because you used a whole bunch of Michelle keywords that get her all excited.
Uh-oh.
FDA, recall, safety. There. Oh, I can't do it. Let's see. There she is.
So, and I reran this piece that I did on Philips Healthcare back from a couple of years ago. I just reran it on LinkedIn recently and got a ton of responses again. But for big companies that have got significant recall situations, look at the Abbotts, BSCs, Philips, and all these things, that they have recalls and then they end up with warning letters and consent decrees, and it's this whole mess of regulatory issues, and it's almost egregious, the actions that have led to this. And unfortunately, most of these companies have got such a huge portfolio of products outside of medical devices that include pharmaceuticals, that include consumer products. So their market share is huge and diverse. And unfortunately, this stuff is not impacting their bottom line because that's what they pay attention to. And patient safety, it's important. It's why most of us are doing this, but I don't know that it's the reason why the people who are in the boardrooms and making the decisions at the company are doing their jobs.
Yikes. I gotta look that article up. What's the name of the article, or should I just Google you?
Oh, well, it's on my blog, and I think we called it Trick or Treat.
I'll get it. I know where it is.
Thank you.
So the warning letter, it might have even been a consent decree that came out against Philips, came out like the day after Halloween. That's why I called it Trick or Treat. And basically, the FDA had basically shut down, for all practical purposes, a whole Philips facility as a result. And it was like they had complaints that led to recalls, that led to misreporting to the FDA, that led to the FDA coming in and doing a for-cause inspection, that led to all of these quality system issues that showed all of these design and development inadequacies. And it just all unraveled. So rather than fix it, they shut that facility down and moved it overseas.
Okay. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. That's incredible.
I just put the link in the chat box for GoToMeeting as well as in the Our Weekly Call section.
You're the man. Thank you.
I am the man.
I'd love to read that.
And
Man, please, I'd like to hear from other folks as well. I'm going to the AORN meeting. If anybody's ever been to that, it's a zoo. I mean, it's 8,000, 9,000 attendees, all OR nurses. My daughter's going to be there, if I dare date myself, she's an operating room specialist as well. She's an RN. But guess what the theme of the meeting is?
Patient safety.
It's about patient safety. You know, I went to a meeting for residents. Guess what their theme was? Patient safety. You know, it's very much on the front burner of customers, of end users. But as you point out, it's not on our front burner, Michelle. It's hard for me to get my head wrapped around that it's so important to the customer, and we call ourselves servicing a customer, but it's not necessarily on our own front burner. And again, you know, back to that question, how do such smart people use precision-made products, or as you pointed out, maybe not so precision-made? I got it. You know, that's wow. That's I hadn't had that in the equation. But
Well,
how do we have that many incidents so regularly? And more importantly, what do we do about it?
yeah, well, and if you think about companies that have, you know, maybe decades in a particular space, a lot of times they're reusing the design inputs and from the previous generation or 2 generations ago to start the new iteration of the device. So we're not starting from a place of truly redefining what does state of the art and standard of care mean now for patient safety versus what did it mean 2 generations ago when you designed this device. You know, the whole post-market surveillance, did we use our adverse events to update our design requirements and criteria?
Around now, I wish I had a few physicians on this call, but I'm wondering aloud if, again, with my bias towards marketing and communication, if the kinds of IFU videos that I've seen and are possible, if they were as prolific and as important to each manufacturer to clearly show all the angles of how to do it, I wonder if they would be used to a degree that could have a material impact on the telephone game Chuck mentioned. Because, you know, I also well know that just because I said something very smart doesn't mean anybody read it or anybody watched it, anyone downloaded it. I wonder though if what it would take, or are we a generation away from the de facto way to learn how to do anything is to watch a video? We're getting there.
That's been on my mind a lot, Joe. I might have mentioned it to you. I was working on it, then I wasn't, and you know, I had to start doing my day job because I like living indoors. But I really started to look at, you know, how do we solve this? Is there a link that could possibly happen? And you know, for my little small piece of, I can't wait to go to the next patient safety meeting. There's one next week, and then there's one in the fall, and I'm going to track down that doctor because I'm going to do my small piece. And you're right. These videos on instructions, how specifically to use a device, many companies have them on thousands of different websites. So if I'm a nurse, my daughter told me a hair-raising story about I forget the device that she was using in ICU, and there were 2 nurses who hadn't had the in-service, and they were frantically trying to figure out how this device worked. And that prompted me to think about, how do you put a video in front of everyone? So I've developed an app. I haven't rolled it out yet. That's happening at the AORN. I've developed an app where manufacturers, this is no commercial, no interruptions, manufacturers in services, only for manufacturers, are going to be featured on this app. So if you put in heart pump, here's the information on the heart pump. So you can put in disease state, specific device, company name, whatever, and you can pull up by keyword all these different in services. You know, hopefully that helps to solve the issue. Every doctor that I spoke to said, well, if I knew about it, I'd use it. You know, that'd be the next big hurdle. but it is something that I'm working on, and maybe if I can, you know, after the AORN and I roll this thing out, I'd like to give everybody an update. I'll try and talk Joe into, you know, letting me do this again so I could tell you, you know, did I get, you know, bananas thrown at me and rotten tomatoes at the AORN, or if people actually signed up. But that's
you know,
key, to be able to get that message from the manufacturer, not some sales rep sitting at the kitchen table, which is what you see on YouTube. Just some dude or dudette sitting in front of a camera, you know, kids running in the background, and they're doing an in-service. Or somebody who just took it upon themselves to do an in-service, a nurse. And it's just, it's sloppy. So I'm just trying to I'm pulling together a methodology, an agnostic channel where all manufacturers can put their in-services, no commercials, just in-service education, and have that available. But yeah, I don't know if that's going to solve it or put a dent in it, but we'll see.
as a marketing strategist, the idea scares me for you.
What's that?
As a marketing strategist, the idea scares me for your ability to continue living indoors.
Say more.
Well, it's just.
If I could add to the conversation, just a couple of comments I want to throw into the mix.
Please.
Because it's really, you know, two parts to this problem, right? One is the human factors part of
Yes.
it. And the other part is reliability. I mean, just fundamentally the product reliability. And that's a big part of my focus is proactive reliability. But I want to talk about human factors for just a moment. There's more and more technology. We're bombarded with technology, and that's certainly no exception in medical devices. And each company is coming with a different user interface, a different interaction, and it's a little bit overwhelming. So it's getting worse and worse. And so the human factors challenge, there's people that are professionals in human factors, and they can do a much better job to make sure there's not a misinterpretation. There's a lot going on. There's math going on and quantities and concentrations, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong. And I really feel for the nurses, especially when something goes wrong, and I've seen some of these things. So, you know, a lot of people design a product and they kind of go through the fundamentals, and it's not just whether or not you violated a redundancy, it's whether or not it's intuitive, and whether or not you can help make it as easy as possible for the doctors and nurses through all that technology. And part of the problem, and I've seen this, is so many nuisance alarms that are not that important. And I don't know if we can get rid of those, but somehow or another, we've got to set a higher standard in human factors, and there's a process there. Some of our partners, I work with all these different partners on deep technology scientists and everything else, but on the human factor side, we have some amazing people that really make it so difficult to make a mistake. It makes a huge difference. Nice. In terms of other steps too. I just wanted to share that. On proactive reliability, a lot of the recalls that, you know, Michelle has shared recently, you know, they're huge. I mean, they spend hundreds of millions of dollars to develop one product, and then they stumble and they blow it and they shut down a whole facility. And most of those failures on reliability are preventable, and that's kind of what I'm focused on. It's kind of sad to see that all get wasted. If they spend 10% of their time understanding failure modes proactively, they'd be in much, much better shape.
Proactive failure.
My 2 cents.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Make a comment if I could. The human factors is huge, but what's more probably equally important is the FDA is aware of that, and that's a relatively recent requirement that FDA has established of the human factors, and the other has to do with design validation. And the whole recalls indicate something went wrong, and the idea, of course, is to define the device design takes into consideration how it's going to be used. The labeling takes into consideration the production. In other words, it all has to work together. But I think that the issue that you talk about is really goes all the way back to design, in the sense of designing it in a way that it cannot do harm. In other words, look at the user interfaces. And so it's a challenge because you've got people using them and people make mistakes. But trying to design it so it's difficult to make a mistake is probably the best answer that I could think of.
Got it. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah, to reiterate, you know, what Mary and Mike said, industry used to say things in response to adverse events. Well, that was a user error. It's not our problem.
Always.
And so, you know, to Larry's point, the FDA has really made a focus of, was it reasonably foreseeable? You know, and then once it happens one time, maybe it wasn't reasonably foreseeable the first time it happened, but then once it happens, now it's reasonably foreseeable because it happened. And now you need to adjust your design, adjust your instructions, whatever it may be, to accommodate this now reasonably foreseeable use case.
Yeah.
And, you know, for some devices, the FDA is even getting real specific about, no, these are foreseeable errors, like in the case of infusion pumps, like key punch errors or buttons being too close and people with fat fingers can't push the buttons individually and they end up overdosing or underdosing or any number of issues.
Yeah, no doubt.
Chuck, is there a company that you feel is doing this right? They've got the patient success and the outcomes high in front of their eyes, and everything cascades from there, and they put attention to this, and they're getting rewarded financially as well as industry congratulations for that type of attention to detail?
No, but thanks for bringing that up. You make a good point, and the answer is no. I don't know any company that fits that. I know a lot of companies that give patient safety, lip service is not the right term, but they are out front in terms of the communication about patient safety, and yet they still can fall into the same category with everyone else having issues. The FDA right on their website for devices makes the statement that the data is not designed for comparative purposes, et cetera, but you can't help but compare. I've got a guy doing a Tableau project for me right now as we speak, so that I can pull up a dashboard and look at some of the challenges that these companies are having. Because when I go knocking on their door and they say, gee, this, what are you talking about? I'll be able to show them what I'm talking about. I'm not going to publicize it or anything. That's the last thing I want to do, is to take that and put it in front of the public. That just isn't the right thing to do. But to be able to spark the conversation that we all have this issue, and this information, these incidents that are being turned in on an annual basis are not a joke. It's real.
By the way, I wanted to jump in here. I have two companies that are partners I work with that do an extraordinary job, and there's a lot of case studies on human factors, the intuitive part. They make the products look beautiful. One is a company called Delve out of Madison, Wisconsin. I'd be happy to introduce you guys to these folks. And the other is Cambridge Design Partnership in Cambridge, UK, and I've worked with both of them for a long time. Delve used to be called Design Concepts. They'll take something that's marginal in terms of human factors, and these guys are pros at human factors, and they do it very objectively, and they do an excellent job on market research. That alone, they could take some products kind of so-so and really make a huge difference. So if anyone is interested in finding someone that can make that difference, they can come in, show the concepts. They know all the rules. They understand all the FDA requirements in terms of human factors. And this can be done. I mean, this is doable. What I often say in my consulting is it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I'm focused on who you know. I want the best person for the job, and then come in. All these problems we're having, people dying and getting hurt, most of those are solvable. And on the technical side, most of my patents are on IV pumps. I've designed lots of IV pumps. I have 26 patents on IV pumps. I know what can go wrong with those things, both the reliability and the human factors. And those things are preventable, but it takes the right people and the discipline and the math and breaking things ahead of time. And I've given this sort of talk earlier, but you break everything, you find the failure mode, you find the design margin, all these things can be done. They're just not doing them. They spend $100 million and they won't spend $5 million on analysis to make sure they have it right. Sorry, my little rant here.
No, I would love to, I didn't write down the name of those companies, but if you could post them, That'd be great.
Yeah, just call me. I'll post them, or just call me and I'll hook you up with them. We'll set up a Zoom call and I'll introduce you to whoever you need to solve the problem. I have the people to solve these problems. It doesn't have to happen.
Yeah,
So
Well,
my
you
clients
can-
like
I
Lily.
don't want to be just the guy that kind of puts it out there and then doesn't have anybody. I would appreciate that.
You can even Slack.
I mean,
them.
any of these problems, you know, there are solutions to all of them. There's solutions. Sorry.
Yeah. Joe, you were saying that you're worried about me staying indoors. Let me just assure you that Carly's working full-time for a consulting firm other than Cogency Group. So I can manage to stay indoors as I get this thing off the ground. And my day job is still consulting. I'm coaching with Boston Scientific. I'm doing projects with Sanofi Genzyme. I'm still in that to keep the lights on. But tell me what you meant. Yes, about marketing. You said earlier before we launched into the other conversation
Oh, I see. Yes.
about marketing that concept.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm going to mute everyone because I'm hearing a lot of background. Yeah, it's usually John. I think you're introducing a new concept and a new behavior. Hey, everybody who ever gets a device, stop what you're doing, go over here and watch something. I don't know how to affect that kind of behavior across tens of thousands of clinicians and physicians throughout the world without a huge budget. I mean, like, we're talking like alphabet sized budgets. Hey, everybody, change the way you've come to learn about how to use a medical device. Go over here and do this and make it part of your routine because everyone else is. You don't have enough money in the world to make that happen. I mean,
Interesting.
right?
Interesting. Yeah, you make a good point. The people that I've spoken to so far, and trust me when I tell you that, you know, the people I've spoken to do not constitute a market study.
No, I know. And they all
Just to
say,
get my
Chuck,
head
that would be a
around
great idea.
Yeah. Oh, I need to be challenged on it, you know, because you can get in your own cocoon and just
I'm
kind
not
of think.
equivocally sure. I mean, there are a few things upon which I would state my, but I bet my house against you if you were to say, here's a way for me to make a living. No way. Mm-mm.
God, I love that.
Mm-mm.
Good.
No, you will not.
Okay. Hey, I'm not going to take your house, but I'll take a steak dinner at a restaurant of my choice.
You're saying that when you're destitute, you will find some solace in the steak dinner that I buy you? Okay.
You know, I'm gonna run with this. You know, I've been
You're
thinking
doing it
about it,
anyhow?
toying with
You
it
fool.
for too long, and I'm gonna roll this out. If it becomes something, if it can become my day job, that's great. If it remains my night job, then it remains my night job. I've got an app out there.
Chuck, I don't even know how
I
you go
believe
about
in my soul
reliably
that I can
getting
make it
content.
happen.
I don't know
Sorry, I
how
didn't hear
you
you.
go about reliably getting content. This is a
How can I
fool's
get
errand.
content?
This is a fool's errand. You can't get people to even make the videos of the kind of quality that I'm talking about.
Oh, Joe, I know that this is great because that vexed me for quite some time. How do I get quality content? Because the quality it makes all the difference. Truly, people are doing this themselves, and they're all over YouTube. Some joker sitting at literally the kitchen table, walking people through in-services.
Yeah.
And then you have the kinds of incidents that we're talking about. And I think I've got a solution for that. And I think I've got a solution for creating the demand. The first thing that I did was who is my customer?
Who is your customer?
Right. Who is my customer?
What's the answer?
And I've been selling 100 years, and the axiom that I've always gone by is the person that writes the check is my customer.
Yeah.
It's not the case here. It's not the case.
Is anyone writing the check in this case?
They will. I haven't launched it yet. but my customer is the end user. And access to that end user is what the manufacturers crave. And I can provide access to that end user for
You're
that
saying that
person. I can't go into a manufacturer, or I could go and try and sell them on the validity of this, and then they all line up at my door and say, Chuck, here's my videos, I want to be a part of this. I think they'd push back and I'd have a monumental selling task. But if I go in and the organization that, and I've got a list of residents that say, gee, I'm interested in this. And I have a stack of RNs that say, Chuck, please tell me when this thing launches. Somebody is going to write a check. And when they write a check, somebody else will write a check, and somebody else, and somebody else, and somebody else. It's not going to catch fire overnight by a long shot, but I believe I can make this happen, and I think I'm the person to do it.
Who did you say that the person writing the check is the
manufacturer?
of the
I'm going to
video?
charge them for every video that they put on my site.
Oh, I see. You're charging the medical device manufacturer for the privilege of hosting their video?
Yes.
I'll bet against that one too.
Yeah,
Good.
so would I. Hi, Chuck, it's Ed.
Hey,
What
Ed.
about the insurance companies? Because more procedures that are done more safely are going to end up costing them less.
No one's paying for this.
But maybe there's a way to create also some continuing education credit for folks who create high quality videos.
Mhm. So my videos are better than all other content on the web, and therefore mine is the only viable place for you to post it. This is folly.
No, I'm not saying it that way, Joe.
No,
I'm
you're not,
saying,
but I am.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
saying that any content that Chuck produces, by definition, is going to have varying levels of quality.
Mhm.
And there's no reason for me to believe that Chuck is going to get that many content producers to have such a mass of have to be there. I mean,
I think the industry is stuck in the past, quite sincerely.
Let me give you an example you can all relate to. I haven't checked recently, but the market valuation for Slack, when I rolled this out in October, was 35 billion. Slack is not part of the way everyone works yet. And there's Microsoft Teams that I'm on. I just became a consultant on a company, and I was like, oh, I got to get you on Slack. And they're like, well, we're already on Microsoft Teams, and it's a team of 6. And this team of 6, despite the president saying, guys, we got to use Teams, I put 4 things on there this week of like, here, I'm going to change the positioning of the company. What do you guys think? Nothing. So yesterday I sent out an email and I said, so, and Michelle, you'll appreciate it was me on my very best behavior. And I said, I'm new here and I don't know the culture. So it's not my place to suggest a structural change, but I'm wondering if, we're really going with Teams because I put time sensitive things there, and, if it's going to be email, somebody tell me. And like one guy said, no, we have to move to Teams. And then the president wrote in and said, no, we really, really got to move to Teams, and please use Outlook by the end of the month. This is a 7, if you include me, person company trying to find a way that we all are willing to change our behavior, because I didn't want to get on Teams because I have plenty of Slack going on. I need another app. Okay. And I need to change the way I do my job. And the engineering founder is not on there, even though he's the one who should answer the question that I posed on Tuesday. The idea, Chuck, of I am going to create the definitive place that people will pay, manufacturers will pay to put the highest quality video, and everyone is going to recognize that this is the place to get it, is so littered with failure that I'm shaking you by the shoulders. Stop it. Stop, 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 stop. Stop.
Chuck, do you watch
stop.
football?
Yeah, occasionally, yeah.
And you see all the technologies that are available for the NFL, for instant replay, for data capture of each player, where they are in space, how many hits, where their hands are. I mean, literally, the video capture technology is progressing. There's a lot of sensors. I think this industry, I mean, if you want to be very disruptive, I would skip over a generation, get cameras into the theater, get monitor instant replay, have review teams come in and monitor how people execute on procedures, and build literally like the go-to team that can, you know, provide feedback and improvement on a constant basis to the surgical theater.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and this is Glenn. I want to jump in and echo some of Joe's comments. Some of you guys know I wrote a book called Thriving in the Healthcare Market, and I've identified 84 pitfalls that vendors fall into trying to sell services to healthcare providers. And what Joe is talking about is I have a whole chapter on operational impact. And you're exactly right, Joe, to get people to change what they do, to get yet another app, you know, let me change the process of how you're doing things. That is a very, very tough sell. People are set in their ways, and, you know, even if something is super and light years ahead of anything else, it's not a guarantee it's going to fail. But if to the extent that people have to change their behavior, their workflows, their mindset, that's a pretty significant barrier, and it can happen, but, you know, it's probably not as easy as most people think.
Yeah,
Two things.
no,
One,
I don't suspect
for
that.
you to be a future leader of the week and talk us through some of the points in your book. So please
Sure.
put that on
Yep.
the calendar. And second, just a personal anecdote, this MDG premium thing. So my LinkedIn group has 350,000 members on it. And 100 people are on this. And I don't think it's because I'm asking them for the equivalent in a year of one of my billable hours. I don't think the price is like enough to knock out 250,000 people. I'm introducing something new that they'd never heard of before.
Yeah.
This is a completely different concept. Hey, how would you like to have me on your team? Ping me anytime and I'll answer a question. Now, I'm pretty confident that the value that I could bring most small to mid-sized companies exceeds $49 a month. I'd do it. But would I really say, well, I don't know about this. I have to pay $50 a month. So what do I get exactly? I can ask him a question or what? And he knows people? Can I not email him? So do I think that this is a value prop that makes sense for the 15 people on this call? Yeah. I can also tell you that within 3 months, 3 of you will drop out. Why? Because you aren't using it enough. And Chuck, Vivian,
That's me.
don't do it, man. Don't do it.
Anybody else?
I'll tell you why else, because if you do, you're not going to have enough money to pay me and come to my conference. So it really is, it's a selfish act on my part. Don't do it.
Think it's a waste of time?
Many profane words just scroll through my head to express how strongly I feel it's a waste of your time.
I think a hobby is a good thing.
Rick, you got to weigh in on this, man.
He just likes laughing.
I don't know if you heard me. but think
I
a
do
hobby is
like
a good
laughing,
thing.
but I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree with Joe more on this just from a getting people to pay for it. But if you can find if you can find a way to do two things, get people to pay for it, and one, and two, to have it established as the very best, that's going to make a difference.
Okay.
That's going to make a huge difference. If I'm getting a video out, it's going to be linked off of YouTube. Why? YouTube is the very most universal, best, accessible sort of thing. And that's why I'm doing it. And I've got lots of other things that I use, and I use them because they're the best. And everybody can read them. It's really whittled down my customer communication. So that's my input.
Thanks.
Chuck, anytime you or anyone on premium want someone to crush their dreams, just call me. I have totally got this market cornered. And yet,
Well, no, I disagree, Joe. I think I have that. I tell my
I was gonna say,
healthcare entrepreneur clients, I used to call myself the bad news guy, because I said, I'm telling you things you probably don't want to hear. And then one of them kind of chewed me out and said, you're crushing our dreams. I said, okay, how about the reality guy? And that's a little more acceptable. But, I hate to be skeptical, but, when you've been around a while and you've seen a lot of things that are good ideas, and there's so many reasons why they can maybe not happen.
Yeah.
It's better to know early on than invest 2 years of time and countless dollars and find out after the fact,
No, I appreciate that.
so two things. One is
Mark had something.
I claim to be the great crusher of things, and Glenn had a counter argument that he's the great crusher of things. So where do you
right.
go for?
We'll arm wrestle over that. How's that?
Because we can both claim that we're crushers, and we can both say that we have the best internet portal for stuff. So which one? And I'll also say, before I yield the floor, I'm sorry. It's
Mark, what's happening, man? Weigh in on this.
Hey, just a couple things.
Please.
As a consultant, I've saved companies a lot of money by crushing their dreams, and they thank me. They spend a small amount of money, and I say, what you're about to do is a bad idea. So, you hear that old saying, the best way to, how to make a small fortune in medical devices is start with a large fortune. You've heard that joke. But having said that, I think a hobby is a good thing, and dreaming is a good thing, but it's good to test the reality. Because my new meme is there's a difference between a vision and a hallucination.
Yes.
And you better know the difference. So that's what I got to say today.
I like that.
Hey, Andreas and Mike Lawless, if you'd put on your camera for a moment, this could be helpful. Gentlemen. In the meanwhile, as we wait, may I have a show of hands of people who think that this is a bad idea? 1, 2.
Well, there's degrees of bad idea, Joe.
Right.
Is it idealistically, is it a good thing to have? It would be great to have, I think. I think Chuck has a very good and noble vision there. The question is it implementable in a successful way?
Right.
I think that's what you're
Commercial, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, who thinks that, the show of hands, who thinks this is a commercially viable idea? Fucking Chuck Vivian, come on, man.
You knew I was going to raise my hand.
And Ivor, take yourself off mute, Ivor, and tell us why you think this is commercially viable.
I think it's commercially viable for a few reasons. Number one, the need is there. Now, before you jump in and say, so what? The need is there. And
Okay.
I think that I am the guy who can implement it.
So if I can get back on a different soapbox. And this is why I'm passionate about helping startups and small companies, because they have got important technology to meet unmet needs for small or specialized patient populations. But I see it over and over again that either big companies aren't interested, or they have struggle getting investment because investors want to see that the market is, say, $100 million. I mean, it's just something ridiculous, and especially like Andreas is in the pediatric market. There's going to be few things in just such a niche genre, but it doesn't mean that they're not needed. It doesn't mean that they're not solving patient problems, but important technologies not getting to the market because of this, where people are putting their money in the expected market size. Not everything in healthcare can be 100 million plus market. And
Right.
I've heard that like the venture arm of Vivian and Bard and some of these companies have like 160 millions their cutoff, and there's a guy to decide what to do if the deal is like 159 million. So I don't know, that might give you some context here. What you're doing, your idea is important. If you're doing it to pay your mortgage, that's a different conversation.
It is.
And
It is.
let
I
me-
appreciate that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, let me say too, I think you're right, Michelle. And part of the reason I don't call myself the bad news guy anymore, because it is a little bit too negative. But the point is, there may be ways, if you can find, if you will, the fatal flaw in whatever it is about what you're trying to do that doesn't work. And some ideas just aren't going to work, but there may be ways to tweak it or to change the focus or to identify the biggest challenges that make it non-viable and modify it to make it viable. So, I work with a lot of startups too, and my goal is to help them overcome these problems, not to tell them that they're out of their minds, because that doesn't do anybody any good. But the point is, if you know what the problems are and try to fix them, then you can find yourself in a viable situation in some cases.
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate that. Thanks. This is a great conversation. Anybody, Ivor, I haven't heard from you, and you raised your hand.
Yes, I have, because here's how I see it. Now, I'm not directly involved with the medical industry in the United States, but from the idea perspective, I think it's good because there's an obvious problem that you're facing. If there's a problem that you're facing, basically what you came up with is an idea of how to, well, if not solve it, help it. So now the way I see it, it's the angle that you're taking is mistaken. Now, the way I would approach it is I would ask myself, okay, who are the people who are having the firsthand problem? Who are the ones who are facing this, what you're trying to fix?
Yes.
In my view, that will be the medical staff, right? The nurses and all that.
Yes.
So why not angle it this way? Go talk to the nurses associations, like in your town, and ask them, look, what are the products that you're having problems with?
Yes.
How do you think that we could approach this? And maybe, there you will have an ear. Now, as Joe said, this might not be a viable business, but that would be the logical way to approach it. Go talk to people who are having the problem firsthand, because you'll be solving by showing your interest. It's going to be like, you showing up and expressing an interest in what's their problem.
Okay.
Maybe you'll get some ideas, and maybe you can, see what I think about it or how to approach it. And maybe someone has mentioned like YouTube as being a viable channel. Get a sister, 2 sisters, 5 of them nurses, right?
Yes.
And see if you can, just take that product and see how it would work if you tape them and show what the problem is. Then you will have the eyes of the producers on you. Basically, you will be squeezing them a bit, because it's going to be a product that bears their name. It's going to be a person handling that product. So you will get their ear. So they will take you more seriously. But then that opens, a whole other series of possible issues. So, the idea is good. You go to a site or an app, and basically it shows you how to address the problem. If,
No, thank
Go.
you. That's great input. I appreciate all the input. But thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Ivor, you lost me at, it may not be a viable business concept.
Well, look, what Chuck said he wanted to do basically is a video platform where he would have to be, like, the way I understood it, he would be making videos on products, high quality videos on products, teaching people how those products work. And now the feedback that the rest of the gentleman and the lady have given was, look, it's hard to expect that those huge companies are going to be interested to pay you to do that. Now, that's unfortunate. So now the way I would angle it is I would go and talk to people who are having first-hand problems with it. That's, I mean, post a video on YouTube or post a video on LinkedIn, and I don't know, Baxter or whichever other company, the company's product is going to start being handled that way. That's going to catch their eye. That's going to catch their attention. Now, that way you will catch their eye and their ear. So maybe then you will make yourself a platform through which they will be more inclined to talk to you to get to where you want to be, because the idea itself makes a lot of sense. Look, we have people dying because someone's messing up. So how do we train the operators to be in the know when it comes to handling our products? Now, the question is, now, from my experience, usually, I had some ideas that I've shared with some companies. I won't be sharing any names. And what I wound up seeing happening is those companies using those ideas themselves, basically bypassing me and doing what I have suggested. So how will you get them to pay you? Now that's what Joe probably has in mind when he says that the idea is not viable. In my view, the idea is very viable. What's not so viable is how will you get them to pay you? Why you?
Which is enough to make me stop.
No, thanks. I appreciate everybody's input. This has been great. I almost said refreshing. I won't call it that. But I appreciate the input. I appreciate the different perspectives. And it's been honest and open, and I look forward to having another conversation about this.
Hey, Chuck, may I ask you something about the content?
Where are
Are
you?
you gonna?
He's right next to you.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Are you gonna create the content yourself, or are you gonna rely on the manufacturers? Because we are such manufacturers, and our instructions for you suck because the 50% of the information that's really useful is hidden in the 85% of the mandatory stuff. And it's all there because we have to cover our asses.
Yes.
And we like people to really read those 15%. But then in certain cases, you also want to read the needles in the haystack that are hidden in the other 85%. So when not to use our product, or what the limits are. So if you're going to make the content yourself, I think you're open for liability, that people are going to use it the wrong way in the wrong circumstances. And if you want to rely on the information that's coming from the manufacturers, then they're always going to cover their ass. They're always going to make the information not that, that's my daughter. They're going to make the information
Bring your daughter back.
crisp and clear that you really like.
I wasn't
Okay.
looking.
No,
Bring your daughter back.
that's an excellent point, and I appreciate it. Because you're right. If I got a guy, let's say I thought of that, I got a guy who has made in-service videos for a living, and he's on the bench. You're saying that if I take on, it's like when I do training and development for an organization, I can train and develop on anything. I coach on a lot of things, but I draw the line at training somebody on their own product because they don't want to turn the keys over to me. They would have a liability issue if Chuck Vivian stood in front of Abbott Vascular, who was a client for years, or Novo Nordisk. I worked for them for 7 years. And I did leadership training. I did strategy work for them. And to your point, if I was standing in front of them, they say, oh, great, Chuck is great in front of our group. Let's have him talk about diabetes. Now that's a problem. I get it. I get it. I appreciate you sharing that.
Now, Chuck,
You're welcome.
Chuck,
Yes,
okay, here's an ad hoc idea.
lay it on
Why
me.
don't you put up a YouTube channel that you're gonna call a video manual, and basically invite people who operate those instruments to upload their own videos. Technically, the revenue you'll be making is going to be coming from views. Now, of course, probably, you know, those companies are going to be much happy with you, but the leverage you'll be using is going to be angled better, because what they'll be facing is a lot of people that are having first-hand problems, and the backlash that the company is going to be faced with if they start trying to, you know, quash those with videos. It's going to open you some, you know, strategic. It's going to place you differently.
I agree
You're
with Ivor. You should add some videos with the best product of the month, because then you will attract a lot of views.
Well, Chuck, I got another idea for you.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, I'm thinking still about, you know, who's willing to pay for something like this. And somebody like, you know, maybe Kaiser Permanente, and I'm sure people on here know them better than I do, but they are, as an organization, very interested in saving money and making sure that they have better procedures happening will cost them less money longer term, and they absolutely have that as a sort of ethos.
Sure.
So if you were to approach them with this idea to say, look, how would you like to be able to make sure that your own existing doctors who are doing procedures are all learning their own best practices from one another? Are you already, maybe they're already doing something like this, I don't even know. But if you go to someone like that who has a great pool of people, some of whom are going to be great and some of whom are going to be mediocre and some of whom are going to be, you know, they're going to want to get rid of, having some sort of a tool like this that you develop with them might be something that becomes a platform that actually Joe could even get behind.
Got it. No, I appreciate that. I know Kaiser very well. I called on them for years, and they're a wonderful organization. Guys, I've got a hard stop here to get ready for another call. Again, I appreciate all the feedback. Any other parting advice or comments?
Well, we can all hit him on Slack, right?
Yeah,
You know how to find you there. So we can keep this conversation going, but well, I think I've tapped out on how much I can try to discourage you, Chuck.
No, I appreciate that.
You're responsible to disregard my free
sincerely
advice,
appreciate
and
Yeah, I get it.
I can do here.
And, I'm going to reach out to some of you just to follow up on some of these ideas. I'd love to read your book, Michelle. I just want to, stay in touch with everybody. And honestly, I appreciate this conversation more than you'll ever know.
Well, you can tell us in the form of gifts. When you're rich from this venture. I think that concludes today's call, folks. Next week, I don't have anybody set up yet, but I know that I'll be somewhat of an absentee landlord again, as I will be judging my son's DECA competition thingy. But I'll be able to sign on and get the thing started. I don't know if, well, actually, I really want to hear Glenn's presentation, so Glenn's not invited to speak next week. Yes,
Again,
Chuck.
one more thing.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody's going to be in Anaheim in the last week in March, but if you want to come into the AORN and just roam around, there's going to be 500 different manufacturers there, and we've got a booth. So if anybody wants, I got 5 coupons to get people in. I don't have 5 people to man the table. So if anybody wants to, if you're in Anaheim last week in March, you got a freebie. Come on in.
Thank you, and please mention that in the Meet in Person channel.
I'll do it.
Yep.
I'll do it. Good idea.
All right.
Okay, guys. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for calling in.
Hasta luego.